Hi, and welcome to Chief for Yourself. It's good to have you with us wherever you are in the world today. We're here to help you to live consciously and to live a genuine life. If I asked you how to or to talk about the personal setbacks and challenges that you've had in your life or you're having right now, I'm sure you could list those without much hesitation. We all face personal struggles at some time. And our guest today is certainly no exception. If you really want to get out of the stands and onto life's playing field, then listen closely today. Kristen Moeller lost her home and her possessions in a sudden wildfire. She's dealt with addiction and an eating disorder, too. She shares her experiences and the lessons learned from them in her book, What Are You Waiting For? Learn How to Rise to the Occasion of Your Life. These days, Kristen does workshops. She's a TED speaker and radio personality, and her intention continues to lie in helping people find and live their passion. Kristen, as a starting point, I want to look at the book's title. When we ask, what are you waiting for? Exactly what do we mean by waiting?
That is an excellent question. You know, it's something I've been studying for quite a while. You'd think it might be an easy answer, and it's not. You know, initially in my first take a few years back, it was looking at some of the basics that we know, you know, waiting to go back to school, waiting till I feel confident enough to ask for that promotion, waiting to write a book, all of those kind of external ways we wait. The things we put off, our tendencies towards procrastination. This book is a deeper exploration into waiting and really looking at how we wait we're waiting to arrive at perfection. We're waiting to one day feel okay. We're waiting to really accept ourselves. You know, on some level, I say that, and then so many people think, oh, well, I accept myself. And I challenge people. I say, well, go look in the mirror right now. Are they kind thoughts that come through your mind when you're staring at yourself in the mirror? Do you make yourself wrong for anything you do in a day, something you said, something that you didn't say, you know, all of these kind of things. It's just the level of the lack of self-acceptance that we live with, and we just take as status quo, and we don't do anything about it. So this book really, it explores all those other areas too, but that's what I think I most care about, is having us wake up to the fact that we're just really still, even after being so wise and so many of us being on a path, we're just not accepting ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Now, is the waiting the same as what you call spiritual narcolepsy?
That's one of the many forms of waiting. Yeah, spiritual narcolepsy, falling asleep at the wheel of life and forgetting who we are really, you know, and those of us on a spiritual path have glimpses of who we are really, and, you know, we forget that. We forget our potential. We forget love. We forget that we're whole, complete, and perfect. We forget all of those things.
The idea of loss and setback is with us every day. We hear it in the media. Jobs are lost. People have financial setbacks. The fire that destroyed your home and your possessions was, of course, a loss. It seems a slap in the head from the universe. It also taught you important lessons. Talk about your life up until the time of the fire.
You know, it was a wake-up call in many ways, and also a way to explore how we are with grief in our culture. So prior to the fire, you know, I was heading along. I had many epiphanies in my life before, as you mentioned when you introduced me. Addiction. I got into recovery from addiction when I was 23 years old. I had cancer. I've lost pregnancies. You know, I've had, like many people, many opportunities to kind of wake up again, and then that's where I bring in that spiritual narcolepsy, because then we start to slowly fall asleep and forget that urgency that we woke up to, and that how precious life is, and those aha moments we just forget. And so, you know, I was going along, and I was actually in the midst, or at the beginning rather, of writing this book, and then the fire happened, and it challenged everything I believed. And I just, you know, at that point, I really wasn't even sure I could write the book, because I wasn't sure I could even address that question. Because that's where this more subtle aspect of waiting came to me, is that I don't propose people not wait and they just jump blindly into things and become doers in life. I mean, we certainly do not need more just doers. We need more consciousness, more slowing down, more still moments. And so the grief process was something I realized I could not hurry through. I had to let myself go. Well, and I didn't have to. I chose to actually let myself have my process and not hurry it. And so it was a different type of waiting. It was patience, and so we don't practice enough patience in our lives. So I think I became a much more patient, much more self-accepting person after the fire.
When we're in what you call the muck of our lives, we don't want to be stuck there, but we do want to allow ourselves to be there. Talk about the idea of being. Is that a spiritual idea to you, or is that just a form of recovery? How do you look at that?
The idea of being?
Yes.
Yeah, just, it's not trying to hurry to get anywhere, because it's just, those of us on a path, we've done so much and seen so much and learned so much that we can kind of get lost in all of that. And, being for me was letting myself, like I was just saying, kind of be with the spaces and places that I was in, be with the messiness, be in the unknown. And when you lose everything to fire, there's a lot of unknown. And quite interestingly, we just almost 2 years later, yesterday had a hearing with the state of Colorado to get some of our claims settled, because the state of Colorado actually burned down our houses in a controlled burn in Colorado that they let get out of control. And we've been in a state of limbo for a really long time of wondering if we would get resolution and how it would go. And and so being with the unknown, being with the uncertainty, and not having to have it all figured out. And even now, my husband and I just still don't know where we want to live. There was important stuff happened yesterday and kind of helping us determine what we might be able to do, but we're still in this unknown. And so I was thinking about this very thing this morning of, can I just be here still? Just be in this place of, I don't know. I don't even know really what we want. I don't know. Do we want to rebuild on that land? Do we want to find another house in the mountains? What do we want? And just being in this place of not knowing and letting that exist.
Well, watching you in video, you seem very, I guess the word is forgiving of the state of Colorado, since they were running a controlled burn. Is it forgiveness that has let you move on like this? Do you feel that sense of letting go of what they did?
Oh, that's interesting. You saw that in. That's good. I mean, I think that certainly I know from my 12-step training, and this, those of us on a spiritual path know, we know that resentment is eating the poison and hoping someone else dies.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
living with resentment isn't good for anybody. But I, believe me, had my anger, and believe me,
Sure.
have still had it. I mean, yesterday morning when we went into this hearing and we were told we only got 5 minutes to speak after 2 years of waiting, it was not a great moment. They ended up giving us a little more time, and they ended up being very kind to us. So I think that's a fine line, because I didn't just instantly go to forgiveness and just say, I just didn't, and I think it is an important place to go. I mean, I think the longer we hang on to the anger and resentment, that just sucks us down too. But that's part of this messiness, this messy humanity that I've spent a lot of time thinking about and writing about as well. Like some of those messy emotions, we're not comfortable with them, so we shove them down, or we're overly engrossed in them and really get stuck and lost. And we all know people on both sides, that people that just numb out, or people that go around angry all the time, and it's just they're seething and you can barely be around them, or they're always in a victim story and all that. So actually being a victim, a quote-unquote victim of the state of Colorado, of their action, was an interesting place to be and explore, like, what is it to truly be a victim, but how not to live in a victimized way, live from victimization.
Yeah. Not to stray from the topic, but it sounds like you have a sort of a good handle on the body-mind connection, that if you do eat this poison, as you say, you are going to be the one to get sick. Is that fair?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You write, too, that the idea of non-attachment was an idea that really didn't resonate with you. That always kind of smacks of Eastern philosophy. Instead, you found the idea of fluidity.
Yes.
And I saw that as less of a forced detachment and more of a kind of a surfing the events of your life as a surfer would do. Is that accurate?
Beautifully said. I like that. Write that down, please.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really good. And it wasn't that I disliked non-attachment prior to the fire. Actually, it was one of those things that I thought that I was supposed to strive for. But after the fire, realizing how it was, again, a standard of perfection that I was holding myself to, of, see, if I weren't attached, I wouldn't have this grief or upset and, all of that kind of stuff. And that just diminished my experience. It was just, it wasn't helpful. So I got into that concept of fluidity, of just, I can look around right now. I'm sitting in my office and I have my dogs at my feet. I am attached to my dogs. If you took away my dogs from me, that would be very upsetting. Mm-hmm. I'm very aware of that. There's certain possessions I'm attached to. And I'm aware. I think that's the piece, is like conscious attachment. Knowing that that's what's happening and being responsible for it, and then also being responsible for the consequences if something happens. That if something happens to my dogs, I am going to be more than upset.
Sure.
And that's a chance I'm going to take with that attachment.
TED Talk, you mentioned that during your addiction, you found you. What was that experience like?
Well, thank you, first of all, for saying TED. TEDx Talk's a little bit different from the TED is the granddaddy, and the TEDx are the children of the granddaddy. So TEDx are local events all over the country. Yeah. I've been fortunate enough to get to speak at a few of those events, which is really an honor. So coming home to me is, it's really what we're talking about, because again, I was thinking, with all my work and all my training and all my recovery and a master's degree in psychology, and having counseled hundreds of people and coached hundreds of people and supporting people and writing their books and taking all this transformational training and reading all these books myself, that I would get to perfection, and I would just, or enlightenment, and stay there. And then from there, I could go and live my life and, feel peace at all times. Mm-hmm. Even if it wasn't always consciously that obvious or that strong. When I boiled it down, it's like, yeah, that's what I want. I want that transformational fix. And so coming home to me was coming home to this messy human that I am sometimes, and with moments of enlightenment and real spiritual connection and wisdom and all that, and then messiness and upset and waking up at 3 a.m. worrying about the world and the case yesterday and, all of these things. It's just coming home to ourselves is a place of just, I think it's just a place we can really rest and realize, all right, this is who I've got to deal with. This person that I am is who I will continue to be. And yes, there's certain behaviors. Addiction, if you're addicted, you can stop the addiction. You'll still have the tendency, but you can stop the addiction and get into recovery and all that. But some of these kind of basic ways that I am, I will continue to be that way.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned 12-step group. Was that a good experience for you? How do you feel about 12-step?
Oh, I love 12-step, and I'm still in 12-step. And I, at 23 years old, almost 25 years ago, I started going to 12-step meetings after going to rehab for the second time. And it just altered my life completely. And it's the place of, it's really about learning to be a better human. Really, it's not about, at this point anymore for me, of, oh my God, am I going to return to my addiction? It's, how can I live with freedom and peace? And then how can I also be there for others who are reaching out and seeking help?
Mm-hmm. Well, like so many members of the baby boomer generation, I was raised with the idea of status quo or fitting in. In the book, you talk about disrupting the ordinary. How or why should we disrupt the ordinary?
Yeah, status quo and fitting in is a perfect example. And my first book about waiting, I talked about the boxes that we live in and all these kind of traps, the box of perfection and the box of being good and behaving and all of these kind of things. And I think we just get stuck in those boxes. And so, breaking out of the status quo. Even if we break out of the box, a quote unquote box, there will always be another one. Because in order to kind of be in this world, we have to have an idea of how things work in order to function. So it's not like there's something wrong with that. It's just realizing the limitations we put on ourselves. And so disrupting the ordinary is about disrupting what's ordinary to you. You know, I don't subscribe a particular belief with that, but it's looking at, so are you afraid to, if you're single and you're trying to, you know, find the person of your dreams, are you afraid to tell people when you're going out with them what you really think or really feel? Or are you holding that back and, you know, not wanting to say because you don't want to look bad? You know, yesterday, I mean, at court, you know, I was in front of this panel of from the state and the attorneys and the attorney general and those kind of people. The media was there. I was on TV, you know, and I cried and I looked messy and I let myself out of that box of needing to be a particular way because that was genuine. That was, you know, it was important for people also to know what's still going on. And so, you know, disrupting the ordinary is what is ordinary for you that's keeping you trapped? What is that status quo that's keeping you trapped and not fully living and not fully experiencing? That's what it's time to disrupt.
Hmm. When people are faced with a situation or situations as you have faced, many are told to have hope and courage. They get support from their friends. You talk about the gift of willingness. Very interesting concept. Talk about that gift of willingness.
You know, that is something I do also track back to my 12-step roots of the willingness to say yes to something that is aligned. You know, I'm not saying say yes to everything or say yes to something that's not good for you, but kind of, you know, I knew at 23 years old when I was staring at my future as a dark, dark hole, and I was finally graduating from college after struggling to even get through, you know, and just no hope for my future. And I was given, well, basically my parents did an intervention, but I could have run, I could have refused, I could have done a million things that addicts do, but I had the willingness to have something be different. And I had the willingness to say yes. And I view that as just a gift when we say yes to the unknown and are just willing to give it a try, just willing to put ourselves out of that comfort zone, just willing to take that next step, just willing to take a risk, you know, all of those things. And so it is a gift that I celebrate and I think willingness is something we can cultivate, you know. I mean, it doesn't mean you're not afraid. It doesn't. We've all heard that courage is not the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. We all have heard that before, but we don't really live from that, you know. But the gift of willingness doesn't mean you don't have fear to take. I mean, when I stood up in front of those lawmakers yesterday and knew that my fate was, our financial fate was being decided, and what they put a value on our loss was being decided. I mean, it was not easy. You know, I was afraid, and when the TV cameras are rolling and I'm being interviewed for a segment, you know, I get afraid, but I'm willing. You know, I'm willing to say yes. I'm willing to put myself out there.
Well, speaking of courts and television interviews and things like that, after having seen one of your interviews on local television, you look like you have a gift for advocacy. Have you thought of doing more work in that direction?
Well, yes, sir. As a matter of fact, it's funny you should say that. You know, I've already actually started one nonprofit and gotten it to a point where it's really running itself well, and I have a wonderful board of directors, and I turned it over to them. And I am launching a book now that is a compilation book of women who have lost their homes I'm going to start with Colorado. So in Colorado forest fires, women who want to tell their stories through the written word. And we're going to do this compilation book with all these other fire survivors, and we're actually going to turn it into a fundraiser to raise funds for future fire victims and begin a program of some kind of peer support where it can be kind of a hotline where you can actually get in touch with someone who's actually been there before, not just the kind of well-meaning friends that say the wrong things so often, but actually people who have walked through it and get that kind of connection. So build some kind of mentorship, peer connection, as well as a fund going forward. And right now the book is called Phoenix Rising, and there'll be more information coming out about it on my website, but I'm really excited, and I'm having people just come out of the woodwork about this, and had media attention about that yesterday, and actually had one of the state representatives who expressed an interest in giving us a blurb and a testimonial and coming to the book launch party. So it's really exciting.
You, along with willingness, you look for humor in situations like, hard to imagine humor in such a terrible loss, but what do you find funny in something like a fire that takes all of your possessions?
Yeah, you would think not much, right?
Right.
That was such an opportunity. After the fire, one of my best friends is a comedian. Her name is Christina Hall, and she did 17 years on the road as a stand-up comedian back in the day, and now does a one-woman show and also teaches other people who want to learn the craft. And I wasn't interested necessarily in being a stand-up comedian, but given I'm a speaker, I'm always interested in developing myself. And it just so happened that after the fire, she was running some of these workshops, and it just, with a little bit of my warped sense of humor and my, truly out of wanting to stay sane. I mean, I think that our humor at times of great tragedy and great stress can be this release valve. And so I actually signed up for one of her workshops, actually 2 workshops. And so I did 2 stand-up comedy acts on stage in front of people, wrote my material, and yes, it was all about the fire. And, I looked at the ridiculously. I looked at the things that people say that are just so awkward and uncomfortable. I looked at, just attachment, and made fun of myself and the attachment issues. And I just tried to bring this humor to it. And it was not to avoid my grief or anything like that. It was really, to kind of bring it and look at the ridiculousness of life, and where we can find humor in the midst of tragedy. And it was quite an extraordinary experience.
One last question, and then we'll let you on your way. After all that's happened in your life, who is Kristen Moeller, and where is she going?
Gosh, that is such a good question. I think that I am allowing that to continue to evolve. And where am I going is I am much more clear now in what I want to be when I grow up. I'm going to be 48 in April, so I think I'm close to growing up. I'm not really sure. But I am a constant learner and student of life, and someone who does say yes, and someone who is gifted with willingness. And I'm a creative person who's also interested in, finding the absurd. And what my mission in life is to help people who can relate to any of that I just said, find it in themselves. And particularly, I help people find it through their own expression and who they are through the written word. I work with authors in birthing that message for themselves and allowing themselves to write their stories, to actually kind of learn who they are through their writing. So that's one of my greatest adventures in life, and more of that. And then, as well as in areas where I've been touched and had my hurts in life, turning around and being of service. So definitely reaching out to other fire victims with this newest project.
All right, the book is What Are You Waiting For? Learn How to Rise to the Occasion of Your Life, Kristen Moeller. Kristen, thanks so much for being with us and for writing what I think is a very important piece of work. And thanks for your humor, too. It's always great to be able to apply something of the funny to all that's happened. And I hope you come back and talk to us again.
I would love that. I've had a really wonderful time. Thank you so much.
Great. Have a wonderful day. All the best to you.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Kristen Moeller, and we will be connecting to Kristen's website at achieve4yourself.com. You'll be able to connect and find out more about the book and see some of Kristen's writings as well through the blog. There is a blog on her website that I'm sure you'll find interesting. As far as the Achieve for Yourself episodes that we'll be carrying in the future, I don't have anything solidly booked. I have a couple of people in mind that we'll be talking to, I hope. So I'll let you know more about that by way of our blog, Genulines, which you'll find at the achieve4yourself.com website. And when you go there, I always ask that you subscribe, leave your email address, and you'll make sure that you get all of the news concerning our guests and concerning what's going on with the show. So when you go to chiefforyourself.com, make sure you do that. Now, I wanted to also mention that the show is being carried now on iHeartRadio. So we're kind of growing as far as the network is concerned. You'll find the show on Blog Talk Radio as well, and numerous other audio hosts. So look for the podcast there. Of course, Google Hangouts will have the video replays and archives of Chief for Yourself. So there's lots of ways you can take in the content. So I do hope you'll be with us for this show and for all shows to come. And we have a good 2014 plan for you. So do be with us. That's going to do it for today. Be well, and I will talk to you soon.